I think their servers are maybe a bit slow.
Mm. So today, let's start pinging people in. Let's have a little chat.
Okay, so as people start to join the room, we're going to be talking about hypnosis, self-hypnosis, and can we get stuck in hypnosis? And are we all living in the matrix as well, which is a bit deep, a bit philosophical. While we're getting going, Rowan, how's your week been?
Yeah, it's been really good. It's been busy floating about, seeing clients and doing stuff with the light, so getting back into the swing of things, being back. How about yourself?
Yeah, another crazy week. Had a few hypnosis clients this week. A smoking cessation one today, and one about trauma as well. So, it's been, and I've had a few people commission me to do some like quite unique hypnosis based on the podcast. So someone's asked me to create a hypnosis session for their company to make them more open-minded to new technology, which is fairly niche hypnosis request, but that's on my to-do list. How about yourself, Graham?
I've been going full time with summer holidays, days out here and there. I've been to Weymouth, been to Sandbanks, been to Jurassic Coast, doing all different bits, fossil hunting and stuff for the kids. So it's not been as much work. I've been doing a little bit of magic as well for some weddings and things. But yeah, it's been mostly spending time with the kids during this time, catching up after them being back in school for a little while. So yeah, everything's good. Everybody's joining us. Welcome. I can see we've got Catherine, Jennifer, Nicole, Dory, and Amy. If you have anyone you think would be interested in this live chat this evening, at the bottom of the page you'll see a plus button. If you press that and you see anyone's faces who you think, all you simply have to do is tap their faces, and it'll send them a ping just to see if they want to join as well. Because tonight, I think it's going to be really good in a way that we can get people chatting. Because this subject, as we've just been discussing before this, it's open to many different avenues, isn't it, Adam and Rowan? Because as you mentioned, this could all be Matrix. It could all just be what we perceive as life, or it could just be a very, very brilliant metaphor. So, Adam or Rowan, do you want to lead the way with it? And I'll start sharing out as we go.
I guess, where this kind of idea came from for me is this idea of, basically my son, wanted to watch a movie. There I am looking through Amazon Prime, Matrix, 1999, classic movie, put it on. And just explaining to him the concept of, when he's like, well, what's Matrix and what's real? Obviously in the movie, it's this idea that the entire life as humans knew it was just like a simulation, and that actually, there they are just being, used to harness energy from them. And this is a theory that has been considered for a while. The key difference is that over the last couple of decades, technology has advanced so much that we're now interacting with computers where there is almost universes within hard drives. You see it, in things like Minecraft and Roblox and kids games. But these kind of universes didn't exist 20 years ago. If the technology continues in the way that it is, then there would be sufficient power and processing power to have entire universes that would be indistinguishable from reality. That kind of point of artificial intelligence reaching a point where it passes the Turing test. Like, you can't differentiate it from a human. And there is I think it's Cambridge professor called Nick Bostrom that came up with this idea of simulation theory, which is essentially, if we accept that technology exists as we're seeing it now to create entire universes built within hard drives, then there's a couple of possibilities. Either we are the very first of a race to create this technology, in which case we're the humans, we're the sentient beings, or we are ourselves living in a simulation. And if we're living in a simulation, we wouldn't know because we're inside the simulation. And I think he did some mathematical modeling of this, and it's a scary figure. It's something like there is a 99.99 recurring chance that we're living in a simulation based on a mathematical probability. And there is a very, very slim chance that we're the first people that create all these different hard drives and processing power that then create the other universes that people are inside, and they wouldn't know they're in a simulation. So in all probability, from a mathematical model, and obviously, humans don't like to accept it, we probably are living in a simulation. So I think it works as an excellent metaphor, because you go down that rabbit hole and you start thinking, well, what does it mean if we are living in a simulation? And the hypnosis way of looking at it, which I think this is really where this line of thought is going to go, is that in a way, it comes from that NLP phrase, the map is not the territory. We all see the world not as the world is, but as we perceive it to be from our own values, our own beliefs, our own history, our own memories, our own experiences, our own goals. It's that reticular activating system that is hardwired to delete everything irrelevant to us and hone in on what's relevant. So my view of the world is going to be different from yours, Graham. It's going to be different from your, Rowan's. We're all living in our own matrix, and everyone else is this is a bit Truman Showish, but we're all like the stars in our own little movie, and we see the world as we think the world is, but everyone else has entirely different realities. So, this idea of, are we living in a simulation? Well, there is a probability that we are in a computer simulation, we just don't know it. That's possible. But either way, even if we're humans, we're all seeing the world as we think the world is based on our own values. So this is probably a bit more philosophical than our usual chats. But the idea that, hypnosis is just something we do in a therapy room or over Zoom with clients to get them experiencing, I think is a bit naive. Every hypnotist I know that really understands hypnosis understands that we go into trances all the time. We're constantly using our unconscious mind, and that in many ways we're in a constant state of self-hypnosis because that helps us deal with the reality of the world and make sense of it. And that's a lot to throw into the mix there. And by the way, if you're listening and you've got any strong opinions on this, do you think we're living in a simulation? Do you think we can get stuck in hypnosis? Do you think that all hypnosis is self-hypnosis? Any opinions or questions, feel free to raise your hand. We'll get you up on stage. But Rowan, what's your thoughts on this?
I think there's a quote by a Nobel Prize neuropsychologist or neurophysiologist, Sir John Eccles, and he says, I want you to know that there are no colours in the real world. There are no fragrances, and there's no beauty and there's no ugliness. Out there, beyond the limits of our perceptual apparatus, is the erratically ambiguous and ceaselessly flowing quantum soup. And we're almost like magicians in that the very act of perception, we take that quantum soup and we convert it into the experience of material reality in our ordinary, everyday waking state of consciousness. And I think that's a really clear way of looking at this whole thing, is that, it's the information that comes in through our sensory organs effectively allows us to build this dream. And this is what we're talking about with the map. It's not filters and beliefs are how we process that information, and that's what creates that world within our mind. So I think, from the perspective of hypnosis, everything we do is based on these beliefs, and what we're doing with hypnosis really is looking at those beliefs about ourselves and about the world and how we can change those. So I think one of the things that sort of struck me over the years doing hypnosis has been that we're not actually hypnotizing people. We're removing hypnotic suggestions that have happened by chance within their own life. And I sort of look at that as a way to look at what we do as sort of facilitators for change within individuals, is this idea that, if a traumatic experience has happened, someone's effectively had an experience where they've been in a state where they needed to be very, very present in that moment. And then after that, the meaning-making part of their mind kicks in and tells themselves a story about what this means about their world, what this means about themselves. And that's where the real trauma happens. So it's really a type of suggestion that they give themselves that then sticks and is either wonderfully beneficial and fills them with life for the like joy for the rest of their life. Like some people survive a car accident and are filled with sort of life because they've escaped death, and other people are traumatized and they'll never get back in a car. And it's that self-hypnosis that they're doing. So I think, but more than that this idea of all hypnosis being self-hypnosis, we have to guide the client. So if the client can't follow the instructions, then they won't go into trance. 9 times out of 10 anyway. So it is a form of self-hypnosis in that respect, definitely, in they're the following of the suggestions. We're just the ones that are guiding them to that state and then facilitating that change with them rather than upon them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of describing that, Rowan. I think as well with that, you need to. For me, I look at everything in my magic world. The way I've worked magic, you'll get people who believe in magic, and you'll get people who will fight you till the day that magic isn't real because there's an answer behind it. Now, whether you want to, I'm going to throw a little bombshell in there. Everything with COVID-19, there's people who believe you need a vaccination. There's people who believe that Bill Gates is putting some sort of chip in your arm. There's always going to be these people who have their different opinions. And usually it's from a suggestion of where it's come from somewhere else, which makes them think. And it completely sets up 2 different worlds as well. Now, with hypnosis, I found for many years a lot of struggles of getting people into hypnosis being self-taught. As I've said many times on here, you need to be able to find that way you can bring someone on side to understand to you. Now, I've mentioned earlier, I've had a lecture from Penguin Magic from a guy called Jay Noblezada, who said when he introduced himself at a magic gig, he'd always say, "Hi everyone, I'm a hypnotist and a magician. I'm here to show you X today." Regardless of that he was there to do magic, because he said hypnosis, that got people's heads ticking already to make them think, "Oh, he could hypnotize me." And whatever their belief, whatever their thought is, whatever their understanding would be, that would start what's going to happen. It's not that you're telling them what's going to happen at that point. What they're believing is what they may have seen on the YouTube clip, what they may have seen in the news, what they could have seen on Paul McKenna back in the day, whatever it may have been. And this is obviously setting them up for their journey of what they believe their reality is going to become based on their beliefs as well. So yeah, very, very much so. I do believe that hypnosis, everyone's permanently in a form of hypnosis, but it all depends on what they believe in. The reason people are grumpy is because they believe, whereas if they actually just opened their eyes and looked at all the positive opportunities around them. I don't know if any of you remember there's the Derren Brown one which he did, which was all about luck and things like that. And there's a bloke who'd never won anything, and he purposely put this woman, and all he had to do was answer 3 questions, or so, like literally 1+1 sort of questions, and he would have won $1,000, something like that. But every time she tried to stop him, no, not for me, not for me. And it just showed how his life was miserable because he never opened himself up to these opportunities, and because he believed he would never win, and because he never won because he never took the opportunity. So there's definitely the different sides of life as well. And also, coming back to the magic as well, there's that look of reality. There's one person who literally could be looking at your hands doing a magic trick, trying to watch what you're going to do because they've had a small insight to it. Whereas there's the other person who just is absolutely besotted by what you're doing because your training, your expertise is making something completely change reality in front of them, even though they know this sleight of hand, even though they know that you could be doing something or using some sort of extra utility device. They're just besotted by it because it brings them back to being a child again. It makes them, even more to the fact is that what I've had recently is people are saying all of a sudden, I've seen it all on TV, but I never thought it was, oh my God, it actually can be done. It's not that it's just a one-off thing, it can actually be done, which completely changes that reality too. And I truly believe by utilising that magic and hypnosis and how close it sits together, you can really pull someone into that sort of reality realm. And if you can keep them there, you can change it. If anyone's not aware of this trick Stuck, he literally goes from magic straight into hypnosis without any formal induction, because the magic trick leads into the induction as such, which ends up making them stuck like a statue in situations. So that's Stuck by James Brown. Adam, have you got anything else to add on that?
I think one of the fears that sometimes comes up about hypnosis is this idea of going into a trance and never waking up again, never coming out of it. And I think of all the things that we're discussing today, this idea of simulation theory and is all hypnosis self-hypnosis, I think that's the easiest one to kind of discuss, because, that idea that you go through an induction and you never awake, as nervous as it makes people, I think once they know that they access trance states all the time, that it isn't this experience that only a hypnotist can facilitate in them. And I think that's one of the things that, I do as part of my pre-talk or kind of consultation calls is just sell them on the idea that they already know how to go into trance because they couldn't function if they didn't, and once they get that, I say, well, look, even if you were lost in a state of daydream, there would never be a case that you would never come out of that state. It's just a state that is a nice, pleasant state that you then feed into something else. So, I feel like that's the easiest thing. Where it gets a bit more complex is if you then have this idea that we're in a permanent state of hypnosis because that's what life is, and we're seeing the world through the vision of a series of post-hypnotic suggestions and this filter of all the values and beliefs. Well, in which case, you don't really wake up from that. You die, or if you're in the idea of you living in a simulation theory, your code comes to an end or whatever it is. But on that element of, you see a hypnotist and you have an induction, you go through a hypnosis process, that's surely the easiest that we can just dispel that myth and say, right, you're not going to never wake up again. What's your thoughts, Graham?
I was just going to say, I think you're really right there. There was one thing that sort of popped in my head while you were talking there, Adam, and it was the idea of Derren Brown's making the sun disappear for someone. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, but he has this guy and he gets him into a trance, and you see a time lapse of him sitting and the sun slowly sort of going down, and then he brings him out of trance and the sun's just disappeared from the sky, and he's blown away by this. But that, like, little tricks like that and things like that are done on TV, I think you can get stuck in a trance possibly, or stuck in some sort of altered state. And so I think stuff like that I think it should maybe be sort of spoken about more openly in those TV shows to say, exactly what's going on here, and that this isn't someone being stuck in a trance. This is effectively just someone enjoying this space for an extended period of time. I don't know if you've got anything to add on that, Graham.
Yeah. So I've had it before, and I've mentioned it in here in the past. A very good regularly gets stuck into hypnosis. Now, when we say stuck into hypnosis, he's a very, very spiritual person who regularly likes to fine-tune himself. That's the words I'm going to kind of use. To the point where if someone's demonstrating hypnosis on him, he'll utilize that good moment. And in the wise words of, you never waste a good orgasm, he utilizes hypnosis in the same way. If he goes into trance, he's going to make sure whatever it is that he wants to resolve in that time, he's going to resolve. And it's to the point of when someone said, right, you can come out of hypnosis, he's literally said to himself, no, I'm going to stay here. Now, is that stuck in hypnosis, or is that optional choose to stay in a location where he feels better for X, Y reason? Which again, as a hypnotist, you need to understand when someone is ready and someone's consolidated by asking them simple questions of, when you're ready to come out of hypnosis, give me a nod, or whatever that telltale sign may be that you require in order to know that you're ready for that next step in your session. And it goes back to when we was doing some training one point, there's someone doing an induction on him, and it was only meant to have been a quick induction, but 10 minutes later he's still there in his trance, to the point where we had to put the old thing of, if you don't come out in a minute, you're not going to go back into there, which completely changed his on-site and played game a little bit. But as friends, we took him to one side and let him have his moment, get a little bit of personal therapy, whatever you want to call it. He had his moment, and then he was ready for the rest of the day. But that's it. Stuck in hypnosis, no. Optionally, taking your time to meditate, to continue, whatever the terminology is that you wish to do. You can do that as much as you wish, and you can stay there for as long as you so wish. So yes, there's definitely the difference of that as well. Sally, welcome up to the stage. I haven't seen you for a little.
Very stiff wrist and very sore at the moment, but I'll get there.
For anyone who doesn't know, Sally broke her arm a couple of weeks ago too, on the mend.
Yeah, I've had the cast off. It's just because of the fracture it was, or the position. So it's fine. I get my wrist go the other way now, so I've got exercises to do, but it's very sore at the moment. I just wanted to just comment really that I've joined in on a couple of workshops for some colleagues that I trained with, and very often I haven't come out of hypnosis when everybody else has, because I wanted to stay there, but they were getting a little bit worried. They were thinking there was something wrong. So I think if you're enjoying it in there and you know you're working on something for yourself, and I think that is okay personally, but I don't know what everybody else thinks.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. It's okay, and I think it's something that makes people competent trainers or competent hypnotists as a whole. If someone's not expecting this and they start to go into a flat panic, they're not ready to be working with clients, because a lot of people say and all this sort of thing. I genuinely think that knowing your client is what it all comes down to. So, if you are working with someone for trauma, you need to expect some sort of reaction when they're finally getting rid of it. There needs to be some sort of release, and some people really do flap too much. And I think it comes back to last week's talk of there's some people out there who haven't had the chance to clear everything of their own before they start working with clients in some cases, which can really be detrimental sometimes, because not has much confidence for a while, and then all of a sudden they see this and it can knock them back a step or two. But just realizing and understanding the simple and really is simple processes of hypnosis, that you can manage someone and control it, and as well as being understanding the cared natured person that you are as therapists, you also need to have that authoritarian side of you to be able to control the session as well. You can't allow them to take over the session more than you. You still need to be able to control that, to be able to lead the way. Rowan or Adam, have you got anything on that?
I think you need to lead the dance, but I would maybe argue that you don't need to necessarily control the situation in that authoritarian way. I think one of the things that's sort of popping in my head here is the idea of these. Can we get stuck in hypnosis? Well, yes, we can, but we can get stuck in hypnotic loops. And this is what's going on in our everyday life. We've maybe got an idea that no one likes when we're in a social situation. We're noticing all those little things that verify that that's a reality for us in our world. And in some respects, that is being stuck in a hypnotic loop, because it's just constantly reinforcing itself and perpetuating the problem. So while it's not what we would class as being stuck in hypnosis in the traditional sort of idea of being stuck in trance and unable to wake up, it is really being stuck in a hypnotic loop. And I think that's what we're doing as well, to some respects, or even just a good friend might do it, that by saying the right thing at the right time and noticing someone being caught in that loop and going, no, actually everyone does actually quite like you, they say this about you behind your back or something like that. So being someone that can lead other people and notice their map of the world, and then give them little bits of your map to expand and pull them out of those loops, is part of our work. So I think in some respects we do have this being stuck in hypnotic loops anyway, maybe not in traditional hypnosis. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important distinction, because you could say any addiction, any habit, any kind of heightened anxiety that people get into consistently, that is one of those hypnotic loops. And the fact that they can go in there so consistently and so reliably, you know, the locus of control has left them. It's outside of them. They don't feel that they've got power to influence that. So that I would say is a good example of, you know, people being stuck in a trance of their own making, although they're not conscious of that, because while they're in there, they don't feel they've got the ability to make different choices. I was speaking to a lady today that, you know, she desperately wants to give up smoking, but when she perceives to be on a stressful phone call, she'll pace around in circles, chain smoking throughout that. And I said, right, which hand do you hold the phone? And she couldn't remember any of the details, because she was accessing a trance when she was in that way as a coping strategy. You know, she knew how to have a phone call, so she could do that completely on autopilot. And then the smoking was just kind of linked to a false belief that it made her more resourceful in some way, or she needed it to cope. But that's a great example of a hypnotic loop that she was stuck in. And then that's where someone like that would go to a hypnotist, a therapist, because they can see it from a different perspective and see that it's a hypnotic loop, and then, you know, provide more choice or options in that situation. Sally, while you're up on stage, do you think we're living in a simulation?
Ooh, hard questions, Adam. Sometimes I feel it, yes, but no, I don't think so. But that's just personal opinion. I was thinking as we're talking there about, it sounds a really stupid thought, but having my wrist before having my wrist in traction, they gave me gas and air. That's the first time I've had that, and it's a weird feeling where you know something is happening, but you don't care. Does that make sense? And I wasn't feeling any pain, and that was like, that's what some people say hypnosis is like for them. For them, they just don't mind as long as they feel they're in a safe place. Is A&E a safe place? I guess so, because that's where we go to get fixed. It was just something that occurred to me when we were talking then. So yeah, I guess, yeah, I don't believe we're living in a simulation, but what we are living in,
it's interesting you say that as well. Sorry, it's quite interesting you say how A&E's a safe place to go to, because there's many people out there who, you know, so many family members go there and die. So literally just the thought of going there creates, you know, that. To go on to your question there, Adam, it's my wife actually put something across to me once that someone put on her shoulders, saying how she has a belief that every single person comes onto this planet to teach someone else a lesson, or whatever it may be. Not that it's a simulation, but even whether it's an unborn child or something, or you know, there's a family member or someone who's going to crash have a crash, or so everyone's on there to teach certain people a set of life lessons along the way, and it's all like it's pre-mapped out. So technically, yes, a simulation, but it was obviously, I'm probably not selling the detail as much because of my classic way of depicting, but it was really, really interesting as to the way that how all this research had gone. And I don't know if either of you pair have done that research, but it just pulled it out so on point as to how something could happen behind it. And I think as well, it kind of gave a reason to Amy, I see you. Oh, sorry, was you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, I read something today, somebody put on Facebook about what when people say that they're sort of near death, they say they see a white light. And somebody said, what if that white light is, and that's why you're crying when you're born? It was just an interesting thought to me. So that was just something I threw in there.
Oh, again. Amy, welcome up to stage. I don't believe we've met before. How come, or what question or point have you got to?
Hi there. No, not met you guys before. First time that I've been in this room. I just wanted to join in when you were talking about the loops. So for me, when I think about hypnosis and working with clients, in my mind, the easiest way for me to kind of have just to make sense of hypnosis and everything that we do is to see it as the opposite of what we think hypnosis is. So instead of, taking people into the trance state, for me, guiding somebody into trance, getting them to that level, for me, I see it as a waking them up. So just kind of like how you were talking about people being stuck in loops, going down the same thought patterns, being stuck. To me, that is somebody who's stuck in hypnosis. So whether it's, we're always faced with those negative loops, aren't we? That's always what we're dealing with, whether it's a habit or behaviour. And so for me, this might not make sense because it's just coming in my head now, and I've probably never really spoke out loud about my own thoughts around this. But it's waking them up out of that trance that they're in, giving them some new stuff that then becomes their own person, then put them back into the trance when I'm bringing them out of the trance, if that makes sense. I hope this is. So I just wanted to join in, and that then the idea of living in a simulation. I get that, and I get the idea of it, because what we do essentially in our work is that we bring people out of the trance they're in, give them some new stuff that's going to be useful for them, and then put them back in the trance, and then they're back in their stimulation in a way that suits them for the rest of their life, generally. So thank you for letting me speak. I hope that made sense for everybody.
Make complete sense, Amy. Yeah, we've been talking. Obviously, we knew it was going to end up taking this avenue as well, because we completely agree with it. There's aspects of how the day-to-day Truman Show life. You carry on doing everything that you're doing until that moment you get given that little taster of something else. Whether it is that you want to start learning a new hobby, so many people want to do different things, but they never do it, and then one little spark which changes something, or you see a therapist and something changes, and all the rest of it as well. So now, one point now with the information, Rowan or Adam, if you.
Yeah, I think the Matrix as a movie is a metaphor for this idea of we are living in a simulation. I think it's quite good because the character Neo, effectively he's ill-equipped for the Matrix. So effectively, what's the first thing they get him doing before he re-enters, what used to be his reality? They give him more skills, they give him more options, they give him more choices. And I think, as a hypnotist, surely that's what we're doing. We're empowering the client so that when they go back into what, is their reality, their matrix, they're able to have more options, more flexibility to get more out of their situation and avoid these loops that are destructive in some way. So I think as a metaphor, it works quite well. I think another thing to think about is, would it make us have any different behaviors or values or priorities in life if we knew for sure that it was a simulation? What's the difference between a simulation and a reality? Would it make us more courageous to pursue our goals? Would it make us less reluctant to tolerate, poor standards or whatever else? Because I think a lot of people stuck in these hypnotic loops waste a hell of a lot of their lives watching meaningless TV, doing jobs they hate. That's the real tragedy. If you're stuck in that form of hypnosis and then your life comes to an end, whether it's a simulation or reality, that's a tragedy, surely. So if we knew for sure that it either was reality and it's our one shot, or in a simulation, would it make us do anything different? Food for thought there. But Andrew, we've got you up on the stage here. What's your question or point?
Yeah, hi. I definitely appreciate the space. I've never, even encountered a hypnosis room in Clubhouse yet, so it's actually pretty cool to run into one. Clubhouse has been quite an experience for me, and just realizing that everything is frequency. And my recent revelation is that content creates reality, so all information is more abundantly available today than ever before. With this platform and the hundreds of others that, have hours and hours being dumped into content creation today. So content creates reality. Therefore, if a hypnotist is working with a client, your content, the hypnotist content, is creating their reality. And they're under the influence of your content. No,
I don't know if anyone else is hearing a bit mumbled there. Andrew, can you repeat that last bit?
Yeah, so I saw a smoker a little bit earlier today, and I was giving her content to become a non-smoker, right? And as she absorbs that content, and then essentially came out of hypnosis, it was just a testing, to test my work of like, hey, what's the craving at on the SUD scale? And she's like a 3. So I used David Snyder's spinning technique after the session to dissolve it to a 0. And just, had her try to bring it back, and it was gone. And so it's always a process of, like, I don't think all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. I think that at some point the self-hypnosis goes away when the content becomes more and holds more weight than your own thoughts of the hypnotist. Then I believe it's beyond. And can you get stuck? It depends, like, how blank you go is how I would put it. The more you get into no thought and blankness and into that space that we know as Elfdale, I feel, the reality could perhaps get there to a point where you stay there for a period of time. Now, to me, what I found along my journey is if I got somebody in Elfdale and just left them there, they'd probably just wake up in a couple hours like they were waking up from a nap. That's how I've never tested it. Like, I've never really had anybody volunteer to say, hey, let's see how deep you can get me today, and just leave me there, and we'll see when I come out. Like, I never have done that with anybody. So I don't think anybody else has either. Even the great Bob side of, you never know. He's got the Swan, and he's gotten people real deep. Like, I love Bob's work, so I got to give him a shout out. But it's a process, right? Like, content creates reality. So when you're working with somebody as a hypnotist, you're creating content to shape their reality. And then when they leave, they're going to open TikTok and get information. They're going to open YouTube and get information. And they're going to go back to whatever they were reading, watching, and doing before they left, which is their matrix. That's their content. And then their reality comes back. However, if you give them a couple of things, a couple of tools, a couple of resources, a couple of anchoring techniques to anchor in a good earnest emotion, or you give them like the deep breath paired with the word relax. Like, I can't remember who first established that, but I learned it from Jason Linett. And, you use these techniques, and if it holds enough weight, that content, then they'll use it. I think life breaks down simply to 3 things, and I like to simplify life because it's quite complicated. And that is, you can choose what to focus on. You can choose what things mean, and then you can choose what to do about that. And I think outside of those 3, there's a couple of instances, but for the most part, if I had to pick anybody in the room and ask you to say, hey, were there a couple of choices you could have done different and you would have a totally different life, they would probably find those. And I'm not saying to reevaluate and go back over everything you should have done, but I'm just showing you the power of a decision.
I think that's really powerful. I completely agree on the point of, content, of course it's, that's all the colors in your, the art of your life. And that second point of your 3 things, I think that's the context point, the meaning that you give things, because I think you can give, as hypnotists, we can give the same content, but if they're not at the point of threshold yet, then that could have no impact on them. And if it's reached the point where it's now a must and, this is it, now or never, then that same content in a different context can have so much more power. So I completely agree with you there, Andrew. I think it's a very valuable insight. Do you think we're living in a simulation?
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much uncanny evidence, and I'll frame it this way. I was brought up in the United States in the military. My dad was working for the NSA, which is the National Security Agency, where Snowden fled from, and then he also went to the Pentagon and had a high security clearance in both spaces. So growing up with a high security clearance background, I took on life and information much differently than most people do over here in the States. Most people go through life as civilian, and then when you're brought up in the military, you're called, the military. And so when you're brought up in the military with a high security clearance background, you're actually taught to discern things very differently. You're also kind of given the insight as to the way things run and operate. So I grew up in Quantico, Virginia, which is where FBI headquarters are. That's the Federal Bureau of Investigation, where they investigate the crimes and the murders and the cartel and all that. But we also have the CIA right here. And I had friends grow up in the CIA, and the CIA basically controls and operates everything. That's the Central Intelligence Agency, and they're called that for a reason. They got people that speak 28 languages. I mean, they're intelligent. they know things far beyond anything I could ever comprehend and understand. And I'm pretty high up there. So it's just a process of starting to realize, like, this whole thing is a projection. And just like a movie is projected from the projector's booth, you can, get immersed in the movie and watch the Titanic sink and cry. Or you can turn around and watch the projector booth and look at that light up there and wonder how that thing even works. So it's all about content. Like, there's content in that example. Content one is, Titanic sinking. You're immersed in it. You're crying. Content two, you look at the projector that's actually putting the Titanic out there on the screen. You see what I mean? And so it just depends on where you take the content from, how you discern that information based on where you get it from, and then what you do with it. Somebody who sat in front of a tree all day in India and did mantra meditation and breath work and pranayama for 8 hours today is going to have a far different life than somebody that worked in a box, sitting in front of a box around people they don't like, making calls to people they don't want to talk to all day. And that person's going to have a far different life than somebody that sat in front of CNN all day, because they all took in different content. They all have a different reality today. And if any one of them switches roles tomorrow, then their reality is going to change. Their content is going to change. And so it's just a process. What I found along my journey was, I used to sit in front of video games all day, eat fast food and eat junk and get fat. I used to smoke cigarettes, drink alcohol, smoke pot all day long. And that was my content. That was my reality. I decided to wake up early, do yoga, go to the gym, work out. I decided to put all my focus in hypnosis and do my session. I decided to, pull in content from a Clubhouse and join a hypnosis room and talk in it. To this point, I've made all of the content and decisions to this day where I've ended up to pass along this information. I think a lot of people need to be taught this or understand this rather, because it's not even teaching you. It's just helping you remember what you already know. And I think if we could help kids, especially in our education system, just realize that it comes down to the choices of their content, and that's going to shape their reality. A lot more successful people, rather than people just going through the loops, memorizing, repeating things, and ending up getting the first job they get, which is usually McDonald's.
Very fair point.
Andrew, I think that's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I think that's brilliant what you just shared. And with me, I'm in the army, so I completely get what you're saying for the civilian to military side of life. But also as well, I think it's very fair as well to say with the whole loops, the whole way we live life and everything like that. Reason as to why so many people, when they leave the army, they struggle to adjust, because all of a sudden what their simulation was that they were having to go through every single day, getting up every morning, getting shaved, getting the kit pressed, making sure they're on parade, making sure they salute people as they go past them, making sure they use the correct rank terminology, everything like that, all of a sudden to not having to have a care in the world, can shave whenever they want to, they can turn up late if they want to, they can actually do that thing and phone up and call in sick, which is actually unheard of, or many other things, or still try and live that same life, which doesn't fit into the civilian world, which I completely get with you, which completely changes that factor of life, reality, or whatever it is, to many different ways as well. So I completely relate with that point. If anyone else has got any other points as well that they wish to share, please do feel free to come up. Rowan, was you going to share something there?
Yeah, it's just off the back of what Andrew was saying there. There's a really powerful poem that I found a few years ago, and if you've got the time, I'd love to just share this with you, because it ties into everything that we're talking about here. So it's called The Power of Thought by A. Victor Segment. And he says, I put through that thoughts are things, endowed with bodies, breath, and wings, and that we send them forth to fill the world with good results or ill, That which we call our secret thought speeds to the earth's remotest spot and leaves its blessings or its woes like tracks behind it as it goes. We awaken in another just the thoughts our minds contain. If we're kind, we win their kindness. If we hate, they hate again. We pass on to brothers mortal the vibrations of the soul, and the knowing ones receive them as they search from pole to pole. We build our futures thought by thought, or good or bad, and know it not, yet so the universe is wrought. Thought is another name, then thy destiny and wait, for love brings love, and hate brings hate. And I think, what he's saying there is that this reality that we live in is shaped by the way we think about things, the way we interact with things. And there's this idea that, if you go to a friend's house and they're depressed, and you have the objective that you're just going to make them smile or laugh once, if you hold that objective, you can generally pull them into your reality for a moment and get them to break their depression. Whereas if you don't set that to visit your friend, there's a chance that you'll get pulled into a funk by their depression. So this is this idea that we awaken in another just the thoughts our minds contain. And I think this is really important because there's this idea of going first in hypnosis. And I'm sure you guys have got this as well, but whenever you lead a trance for someone else, you go into trance first, every time. And I think Ty James says, I record all my sessions because I can't remember what I've said afterwards, Like if you asked me what I was saying during the session, it just wouldn't be there. And the idea of state-dependent learning, different states, different frames, and different trances, all actually just being different names for the same type of thing. So I think we are living in this simulation, but my view is it's a mental simulation, and this ties into the older sort of view of the Hermetic principles, that the first principle is the principle of mentalism, that the all is mind, the universe is mental, and everything's made up of information and energy that creates matter. And the way we interact with energy and information actually our reality is formed. And I came across this idea that there's an old Egyptian prayer called the Headless Rite, and there's a line in it about the bornless one who no man has seen at any time. And it's this idea that no one really knows you, no one ever touches you, no one ever sees you, no one ever hears you. They all hear and see and touch the illusions of their mind. And it's all this, it's like we all live in our own personal universe that's created by our mind based on the quantum information. And we dance with each other in a dance of the multiverse and interact with each other's universes and create this reality that we all share in this beautiful existence that we're sharing just now. So I think there's a real tie-in between all of the sort of subject matter that we've covered today with this idea of everything being hypnosis, everything being a different state that we've learned in that respect, and it all being this effectively a matrix, but maybe just a matrix within our own mind.
I mean, powerful insights there, Rowan. And if you knew for sure that you were just a little bit of code in, a very advanced version of Sims, what does it change for you? What do you do differently? Do you go out on a murdering spree? Do you take out massive loans and spend loads of money? What do you do differently if you know that you're just a line of code?
Maybe I already know that I'm just a line of code and I'm doing exactly what I would do because I know that I'm just a line of code.
Fair point. What about you, Graham?
To be honest, I'll be completely honest with you. When I was younger, I used to regularly have these moments where I'd trance out, and I just imagine that thought of looking through my eyes, thinking, "There's no one else who can see what I can see. How do I know what I see?" So for anyone who doesn't know, we're also streaming this onto YouTube, so we're on Zoom right now as well. So what I can see of me is what I can see of me. And there's been many times when I was at my biggest before I lost weight, I looked at myself and I was happy with myself every single day. And I've got a picture somewhere on my Facebook where I actually had a massive gut on me, self accepting what I saw. I could not see that. And again, that whole reality just creates something. So yeah, I don't know what I'd do. I don't know. I really don't know. I would like to think that I'm not just a piece of code. But at the same time, it does make me question many times of who I am, what my job is, within the world to create something, and hopefully it's mostly just to make people smile or give some sort of connection somewhere along the way, as cheesy as that may sound. But a little bit too, as I told you guys earlier, the way life can, if we are code, if it's the way things are all made to be seen. I did a magic trick at the weekend where basically I find 4 aces within a deck utilising a person who I'm performing to. Trick. What I'd normally do is say, "Oh, it's surprising we found these 4 aces because the rest of the deck's completely empty." But this person actually beat me before it because he had one half the deck, and he turned over the cards and kind of looked at the cards, except the deck was normal until I'd actually mentioned that they were blank. And then he's like, "How did you change that? How did you change that deck? They were there a minute ago." But because his brain went into simulation, into that whole thing, he just looked at the cards as if to go, "Well, how did we manage to pick them?" He believed he'd seen all the suits, all the colours, everything on some complete blank pieces of paper, just because the other side still had the regular card colouring on the background. So like I say, it can be how you simply speak to someone, how you can continue to go on. And I'm guilty for it, and many of us are. If comes on, I can have a full conversation with my wife and not have a single word of what was said. I could not repeat it, not for 10 pence, but I could tell you everything that happened on the TV. Getting drawn into something in a completely different dimension, and sometimes we need to realise that in our life, and maybe just become more aware of the now, however that may be. And I think exactly how Rowan said it before, it's when you're in them sort of patterns that you are stuck in hypnosis, and you maybe be downloading that another little bit of information. Kids are doing it more on YouTube and stuff. I do believe YouTube does have its assets because it teaches kids a lot more. There's more assets to be brought out of it. But at the same time, you've got to watch how much they're downloading, so to say, and bring it up. And also, looking at the time as well, I really want to thank everyone who has come up and shared their information this evening, because it gets us all thinking, doesn't it? Adam, you got anything on that? It really does get us thinking, doesn't it? Actually, are you a line of code as well?
I mean, based on the scientists that are much smarter than me, apparently I am. I'm just a line of code, because here's how the theory evolves. It's kind of like, if either our civilization or a civilization like us can create computers with, effectively unlimited processing power and unlimited storage, then it means that, there is the capacity to have infinite universes with, the ability to have all these different, entities that have so much processing power that they believe that they're sentient, that they believe that they have a consciousness. Now, if that's the truth, if even just one civilization in a universe could create that level of technology, then the probability of us being code within a machine and our universe is effectively some cloud computer somewhere. It's highly probable that we are code, but I'm not particularly religious, so it doesn't matter to me if I'm a piece of code or, some kind of creation, unique species. I'm doing my thing anyway. It's kind of like, because we'll never know if we're in a simulation. But if we are in a simulation, this is the richness of our life as we can experience it, only in the way that we can experience it. So surely it's our duty to make the very most of whatever life is, however we define it, whether we're in a simulation or not. And I think there was a really good line in, I don't know if anyone's seen this, This Life or something, Ricky Gervais, he had a sitcom based on, what was it called?
It's the one when he believes he's dying. Well, he wants to kill himself, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah, but I can't think of the name of it.
Yeah, but something about life or whatever it is. But anyway, he's got like a religious colleague who then says to him, "Would you believe in God?" And he's like, "Well, no." And he's like, "Well, why don't you just go out killing everyone?" And he's like, "Because I don't want to." And there is this idea that there has to be some kind of meaning to stop us doing things, but surely that meaning comes from within us. It's our own values, it's our own priorities. It's, and I think we're going to do a future room on, hypnosis to kind of find your purpose, because I think for me, that's the one thing that I've seen that really influences a quality of life. For those people that have got a clearly defined purpose as to what impact they're going to have on the world, whatever that world is for them, in a way, that is a a long-term post-hypnotic suggestion, which gives them a sense of resourcefulness consistently, because they feel at some level they're going to have some kind of impact on the world. So, for me, if it is all a simulation, how we can make that a richer experience is the meaning that we give it. And I think one of the key meanings, to enrich whatever we call our existence is some kind of purpose or mission. And if you have that, your experience, life, simulation, whatever it is all the richer for it. But to answer your question, yeah, I think it's highly probable we are just a piece of code.
I'm sure you think the same as me, though. Who the hell decided to put that bit of code in with bold? Who took my hair away?
I tell you what, Graham. I saw someone I'm connected to on Facebook, and I mean it's different how different people see the world, because he shared a picture of a hair transplant, and it looked like the most painful thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was looking at that, and I was thinking he clearly has different beliefs, about what hair means to him, to go through that level of pain, and his identity is linked to that. And I remember thinking, I'm really happy with my bald head. Thank good that I have this particular values and things like that, so I don't have to go through such excruciating pain. It just looked the most painful thing ever. But I'm in my simulation, I'm in my matrix, he's in his. And we're willing to do crazy things to kind of pursue what's important to us. I think is the key thing.
That's it. And I think to finish this off as well, it does make you think about people who end up in addictions, drugs, alcohol, or whatever. They're ones who are desperately trying to find a way of how to raise their simulation.
Well, there is a possibility. Yeah, if you do believe, because there's a couple of different ways you can look at it. If we are all in a simulation, that can create this nihilistic, what's the point of living at all? What's the point of doing anything? So you could have that perception. But then if you say, well, if we are in a simulation, this is still, our representation of what life is. Therefore, why not make the very most and best of that experience? Well, you're going to get a whole different thing. And I think it was what Andrew was saying before, is it's what you focus on. It's the meaning you give it, and then the choices that you make. And, someone could have that content of, we're coding a simulation, and it's like, well, nothing's worth doing anything at all. It's not worth trying at all, a very fatalistic approach. But someone else could say, well, if I'm a piece of code, I'm going to make my little kind of, journey in the story a little bit better. And I think there's a movie that comes out tomorrow where Ryan Reynolds plays a character in a computer simulation, and then figures out that he's in a simulation. So, the timing of this is quite funny. But, there is that idea of, well, what would we do if we did know for sure that we were just like in this kind of prearranged, simulation, to what extent do we do things? And what it comes down to is the choices that we make and those values and priorities. So, it's fascinating. But I think as long as you don't go down this rabbit hole with this approach of, well, nothing's worth anything, like it's all meaningless, then I think that's the dark area that could lead to, a kind of what's the point. And when I've worked with a few people with a fear of death and atophobia, quite often they go down that approach when they say, well, I'm going to die anyway, so what's the point of doing anything? And really, when I help them escape that hypnotic loop, it's always the exact opposite. Well, you are going to die. Imagine if you were immortal, life would be completely meaningless then. So it's the scarcity of life that actually gives it meaning. That it's almost the exact opposite belief system they need to have an appreciation of that. It is a weird conversation, because we'll never know. That's the reality, if we're in a simulation or not. So who cares?
Yeah, and I'll just jump in there. Just to add that if we did discover we were in a simulation, then obviously the natural thing would be to form a rebellion and destroy the whole thing, as us humans do. But I just want to say thank you for letting me come up on stage and speak tonight. I've enjoyed listening to the room. I've had some great insights from you all, so thank you, and good night, everybody.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us, Amy. We're here every week from 9 till 10, even if it's just one or two of us. But I think that's quite a good spot to end. So really, we'll never truly know whether we are permanently stuck in hypnosis or whether all hypnosis is just self-hypnosis. But and that we may actually just be on a simulation. But either way, as long as everything's physically practical of how we implement everything and do it with the best intentions, then as long as you keep life and you may keep on helping everyone, then just keep it going in that way. Rowan, have you got anything to add?
No, I think we've covered pretty much everything that we can cover on this for the hour that we've had. One thing did pop in my head was the idea of the old stories of the men that glimpse the grail and can't handle it and go grey and lose all the lust for life. It was just this idea that maybe they've seen the fact that we are in a simulation.
Brilliant. Well, everyone, thank you very much for joining us. As always, like we said, we're here from 9 till 10 every Thursday. With everyone else, let us know, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. So take care and have a great week.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.